Okay. So any solutions? This from this E10 meeting? Any?
No, the E10 are always helpful.
Yeah.
And they sort of represent the various extremes, if you like.
Sure. You got Bolivia and.
I feel good about that. I feel better now than I did this morning.
So you're going to put forward a new draft? Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad to work in it. No one can say you're not working on it. That's for sure. Okay, we're here. We were almost chased out. Embajador Solís, perdóname. Good? Productive? Can the E10 solve it? In the meeting today, Bolivia's Ambassador Solís Laurenti Solís said he couldn't support it as written, but he could imagine something. This is a newsy meeting that actually took place. All of the silence has led somewhere. Here we are. Ethiopia, Bolivia. We'll wait for Kuwait's readout. O ye of little faith, due to their disinterest in the Central African Republic, the Genius Press Corps has hit the streets. We were asked to leave, actually, because there's no more guard there. How we're going to get out, I have no idea. Simply because of Alison Smale's censorship regime. But we remain here for the presidency. Has it been solved? Elected members? Something? Good. Well, that's good. You guys are in a better position. Okay, good. Yeah, definitely. Hello. E10 accomplishments?
Not yet. Nothing to comment yet.
Okay. There they go, down the long hallway. We're not actually authorized to go past the red light. Other journalists are, that never come in. E10, I'm actually glad for this downtime. I should have explained it. The elected 10, let me explain. And so, here, from the absolute emptiness of the UN Security Council, from another day of inaction from Central African Republic to attempted work by the E10 on Syria, which we've covered in this Periscope. We're going to suspend for now, but we will be back through the tourist entrance. Okay, we're here. We were almost chased out. Embajador Solís, perdóname. Good? Productive? Can the E10 solve it? In the meeting today, Bolivia's Ambassador Solís Laurenti Solís said he couldn't support it as written, but he could imagine something. This is a newsy meeting that actually took place. All of the silence has led somewhere. Here we are. Ethiopia, Bolivia. We'll wait for Kuwait's readout. O ye of little faith, due to their disinterest in the Central African Republic, the Genius Press Corps has hit the streets. We were asked to leave, actually, because there's no more guard there. How we're going to get out, I have no idea. Simply because of Alison Smale's censorship regime. But we remain here for the presidency. Here's what happened. At noon, there was the meeting on Syria. Members spoke about the draft. Russia made some proposals. And now, much to their credit, it appears that Kuwait has convened, or at least hosted, an E10 meeting, a meeting of the E10 on the Syria conundrum. This has happened before. Sometimes the E10 can pull the fat out of the fire. Now, it wasn't announced. And after the Central African Republic meeting, there was no other media here except Inner City Press. And then they closed down the stakeout. And then the guard said, you got to go because I'm going to close the post. It may already be closed. Hey, the E10 heroes. Has it been solved? Elected members? Something? Good. Well, that's good. You guys are in a better position. Okay, good. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Kazakhstan, Bolivia. Now, let's review. The UN Censorship Alliance got down with the sold access to the elected 10. If you paid them money, you could go and have, I don't know, wine and drinks. I don't know. They have an Italian guy that has a mansion in the Hamptons, too, rents apartments to Sri Lankan war criminals. But we didn't go because we think it's corrupt. But when the actual E10 is actually doing work, they're not here. They don't care. Because it was Central African Republic, you know? Child rape, not important. Or it's a bad story for the UN. Let's focus on the positive. Stefan de Mistura, where are you? But here's the E10 meeting about Syria. It's fabulous. Well, so far we've seen Bolivia leave. We saw Ethiopia leave and joked with him off camera before launching this about the state of emergency. Not that it's a joke, but he said you don't talk about the process of deepening democratization. Why you need a state of emergency to deepen your democracy, I don't know, but I'm sure there's an answer. We've got Bolivia, Kazakhstan at the perm rep level, also Ethiopia. See, maybe they slipped in, or maybe they came for CAR and stayed for Syria. We're going to get in the last question. No UN censorship alliance, no selling of access, just shoe leather or sneakers, as the case may be. The UN gets quiet, real quiet. Didn't used to be this way. They've closed the post. We can't get out this way, and our pass doesn't work on the turnstile. Thanks, Allison Smale. Fabulous. The journalists that you give access to don't care to cover it, but the one that does is restricted. And there's no explanation of what the process is, how it's legitimate. If you don't like the message, if it doesn't fit with your propaganda, speaking with one voice, promoting Antonio Guterres, then you're allowed to restrict the press. This is called censorship. This is called totalitarianism. It's not consistent with the New York Times former German editing claim. It's not. It's disgusting. Bad advice. Bad advice from, and we'll name them, Hua Jiang, Darren Ferrand, Maher Nasser. In the same way that Antonio Guterres has gotten terrible advice on Cameroon from Kassim Diagne. And we've got some other names, but we'll wait. Right now it's all about Syria and about the closed, beige door of the UN Security Council, the E10 meeting. Through that very door. Fahad, spokesman, where are you? This was the perm reppers. These were some perm reppers, and they came out looking, not, they're not the real ideologues. I mean, they are and they aren't. But they all work to get elected, or at least get selected by their regional group, and they all face the danger of being irrelevant, and so they can band together. The question is, the veto wielders. No meeting agenda. In fact, the existence of this meeting wasn't listed anywhere. I only learned of it because I was being asked to leave. That's why it's sometimes good to stand up for your rights. They don't understand that. The origin of my problem is that I went to cover a meeting in the press briefing room, and when they said leave, I said, why? Where's your piece of paper? And then I said, look, if you don't have a paper, and they didn't, if a guard asked me to leave, I'll leave. But I'm not going to leave because the spokesman, Stefan Dujarric, tells me to leave, because then he'll order me out every day. The guy's a total censor and hack, I'm sorry to say. That's what it's turned out through time, because he has benefited. For 2 years, he has restricted the press that asks him the most questions, gleefully. Okay, we got something. Something is on the move. Let's see. Hello? E10 accomplishments?
Not yet. Nothing to comment yet.
Okay. This is a high-level meeting. We've got the PR of the Netherlands. We've got the PR of Bolivia. We've got the PR of Ethiopia. We've got the PR of Kazakhstan. I'm certain that we have the PR of Kuwait. We might even have the Kuwait foreign minister. I don't know. It could be. It could not be. Netherlands is the chair of the DPRK, North Korea Committee. Sometimes you just have to bust it out. I'm not busting much, but I am at least here, despite many requests that I not be here. Those were from the Netherlands. That was Mr. He's an extremely active on social media. You can find him, the ambassador of the Netherlands. There they go, down the long hallway. We're not actually authorized to go past the red light. Other journalists are that never come in. E10, I'm actually glad for this downtime. I sort of explained it. The elected 10, let me explain. The UN Security Council, the world's preeminent, and that's sad, preeminent peace and security body, is made up of 15 members. 5 are always on the board. That would be the winners, quote unquote, of the World War II. UK, US, France, did they win? I don't know. Russia and China. And then there's the elected 10, and they come in 5 at a time each year for 2-year terms. There was one strangeness here where the European seat ended up being split 1 year each between Italy and the Netherlands. But basically the E10 means the elected 10. Permanent 5 don't change, E10 do change. Now we can say Ethiopia is leaving and South Africa is coming on, or so they say. Looks pretty much assured. And there's a lot of discussion about how this term will be different than their last term, where they, well, you can be the judge. Are they more credible now, less credible? We'll be covering that here on Inner City Press. However restricted, we come in through the tourist entrance. Seriously. The offices upstairs are tumbleweeds. The guys don't even come in. They come in to have not free drinks. They pay for them to buy access to the E10 that they don't even use. They don't even write any articles. It's a social club. And that's why they get away with this shenanigans, because nobody's covering them. Some wire services write a lot of stories, mostly handed to them by the P3. Now, let's go further. P3 as opposed to P5. P5 is US, UK, France, Russia, and China. But it's been said historically there's the P3, beating the drum of justice, they say. Or of regime change, say others. UK, France, and US. Now, under Trump, it suddenly became maybe there won't be a P3 anymore. Maybe there'll just be a P2 of the UK and France. But in fact, Trump has kind of rolled it back in. As much as whatever you may hear on TV about collusion, take a look at the policies. Take a look at the policies. So I just say that, I try to say that objectively. There's still a P3. The Syrian ambassador called them the Three Musketeers. I thought he said Mouseketeers, but he said Musketeers today. Standing right here, he said, I have 5 points. He made all of them. Because Kuwait, inside, had only given him, said, or encouraged him to only take 5 minutes. He took 17 or so. But that was it. So we can go down the flags. Kazakhstan's got that nice blue. Bolivia, looking good. That's China, they're P3. Then you got the Netherlands. Poland is on. Peru is on. You know, so you can look it up. They come in 5 at a time. There's very rarely a contested election. Usually it's the group just says, this is our candidate. And some people don't vote. That's the way you express your dissatisfaction with the member. Now, is Kuwait, I would say Kuwait's still in there, because when they're not, they lock that door tight as a drum. Let's see. Can we vote? Yeah. Whether there'll be a new draft, I don't know. But maybe the E10 is trying to come up with a collective position. They're tired of getting pushed around. See, that's the thing. Countries, they have to announce like 5 or more years in advance that they want to run. Well, that's interesting. Okay, good question. Or I'm sure, I don't mind about offending the UN, but Sweden is on the humanitarian front. They're demanding a vote on this one. Bolivia goes more on the Russian side. They say they believe in humanitarian issues, but they don't like to see it politicized and instrumentalized. Ethiopia, honestly, in practice and in voting, tends to go is shifting more to the Russian-Bolivia axis. Poland would be interesting. Poland is their internal politics are pretty Trumpian. It's said, national pride. How it will play out on a vote like this, no one can say. So now there are countries that use their E10 status to drive their financial interests. We've covered that. Please read innercitypress.com. But I think in part, the thing that would bring the E10 together on this one is maybe this is too cartoonish, but what good is it to spend 10 years running and 2 years on the Security Council if everyone says the place is a joke? Now, the place is a joke. I would say for CAR reasons, even more so than Syria. I mean, there are political disagreements in the world, and it's not surprising that people can't agree. But these guys, even at their home country, I don't know if in some of their home countries, they feel that public opinion is telling them that it's a joke. Some countries, people say you spend too much money running for the seat. They do spend money. There's some swag bags. There's a lot of travel. Travel to get elected, even if it's not an election. That's the funny thing about the UN. You can have elections with no competition, and people are still spending money campaigning, buying bribes. Look, that countries advance their interests with money is one thing. That the UN is so corrupt, that's something else. They're not authorized to be corrupt. They're not supposed to have a foreign policy. They definitely are not in the right to be censoring media they don't like. It's a joke. Those who've been involved in that should pack their tents. Okay, now, unless Kuwait has a special motorboat parked out on the East River, behind us here is the river and the president's office. fronts on the river over a 2-story balcony. So you could imagine a presidency that had a rope ladder and a speedboat. But I believe that all of this waiting will pay off, possibly. And it's just that. Now, who didn't we see come out? Let's go over it. Gone. Netherlands. Gone. Kazakhstan. Gone. Bolivia. Gone. Ethiopia. What about Poland? What about Sweden? Sweden is in. I will bet you dollars to donuts that Sweden is in the house. Olaf Skog. He's a co-drafter. Come on. Skog has got to be in the house. Peru? I don't know. Cote d'Ivoire hit the road. That was the first guy we spoke, so I take that back. We spoke to Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire gone, Ethiopia gone. Bolivia gone, Netherlands gone. Kazakhstan gone. Let's count them. Sorry. Cote d'Ivoire first, out the door. Ethiopia. Bolivia. Kazakhstan. Netherlands. Definitely 5 are gone. What about Poland? What about especially Sweden? I believe Sweden will be in there. It's their draft. Maybe the 2 drafters decided to rally the E10. Oh, sorry. Let me try. Tell me if it gets better, because I've done everything possible, including putting WD-40 in my headphones jack. But it's a... All right. So I think, let me see. Hopefully a little rotation. Okay. At least 5, and probably more have left. Okay. Since we have this time together, is this better? Oh, draft. Okay. Draft is a draft resolution. See, before they vote on something, they draft it. Is this better? Great. Maybe no more microphone. We'll go this route. Cool. Yeah, 2 countries made a draft to propose a humanitarian, they said, ceasefire, end of sieges. They were Sweden and Kuwait. They are the pen holders. And what they do is that they draft, they write a proposed resolution. They consult with others, and then they threaten to put it to the vote. Usually, many resolutions are passed without any controversy at all, like extending the mandate of a peacekeeping mission. Somebody might want to save some money. That would be the U.S. sometimes these days. Somebody might want to cut back on the human rights component. There's been various things. But this is a draft that would ask for a ceasefire. So there was opposition to it. Some people, the Russian proposed amendments would condemn the rocket fire from eastern Ghouta. Now, I'll bet you that the France, the UK, and US would not appreciate that addition. Now, would Russia veto it if it doesn't have that language? We don't know. So there was a draft. We published it, actually. We published the draft because of some scribbled problems on Patreon, but you could find it. But now there's some amendments. So I would assume that the 2 drafters, Sweden and Kuwait, need to redraft based on comments made today and the Russian amendments. And to not feel that they're just on their own, and to not be seen as tools of the P3 that we've previously explained, they met as all E10. And they will come out with a new document. And if it's to the liking of all 5, particularly of the big 5. Now, I doubt that Sweden would sign off on a new draft that took in the Russian amendments in full. I think you have it wrong. I'm not sure you understand. I'm sorry. I would say Russia's closest ally on the E10 currently, most vocal, is Bolivia. And they came out looking happy and saying something's on the move. So, and the P3's allies are, Legion. Sweden, because it's just they do sell weapons, of course. I believe to Yemen, actually. But, they say all the right things. And Kuwait, this is they're part of the Gulf situation. That's why they tried to shut Mr. Jafari down on the 5. That was their contribution. There's more. They've been pretty transparent, except on Central African Republic, and feeding the beast of the UN Censorship Alliance. But anyway, no hard feelings. This part of the UN, I enjoy covering. People think it's sleazy. I think it's it's almost. I'm not going to say it's like sports. That would be kind of cynical. But it's interesting, and it's not surprising that countries have their own foreign policies, and honestly, they don't really beat around the bush about them. It's the UN's hip hypocrisy of claiming to have zero tolerance while letting people off the hook and covering up for them, claiming to be for freedom of speech while censoring yesterday's noon briefing, only inner city press asked questions. And it's the only media that was thrown in the street and restricted. It's a joke. Yeah, Netherlands I would put them kind of like Sweden. I'm not saying, you'll find issues everywhere. You'll find issues everywhere. I think that they're very, very, very proud of their stuff, and I'm not, I could ask for more transparency, and have. But on this one, I would say, in terms of how the draft will change, this will involve largely Sweden and Kuwait. Because it's on paper. They're the drafters. They're the pen holders. Now, they're allowed to hold the pen, whereas on actual countries, the colonial ex-power so often, holds the pen. Oh, sorry, I missed that one. I saw the word how. Okay. So, any solutions? From this E10 meeting? Any?
No, the E10 are always helpful.
Yeah.
And they sort of represent the various extremes, if you like.
Sure. You got Bolivia and.
I feel good about that. I feel better now than I did this morning.
So you're going to put forward a new draft? Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad to work in it. No one can say you're not working on it. That's for sure. All right. So here we go. See, the E10 represent the extremes. Beautiful. I would say, personally, I would say probably this was a reference to, for example, Bolivia as something, not of a stalking horse for Russia. They truly believe it. They believe in it. But if Bolivia can live with the draft, probably Russia could live with the draft. I don't know if they're making cell phone calls or not. That I don't know. And the others can be equally, I don't know who we'd be referring to as extreme. The P3 could be extreme in some view. I mean, if you're going to blow up a resolution based on perambular paragraphs that have no impact, I mean, I guess none of it has any impact if you don't comply with it, but there are operative paragraphs and perambular paragraphs. The operative ones say shall, you could actually trigger sanctions, you could do different things. The perambular ones, but I guess as a matter of pride, as a matter of principle, I could see the P3 believing that to refer to rocket fire from eastern Ghouta would be, in essence, might imply that the attacks on them were somehow legitimated. And so even the perambular paragraphs could be an issue of concern. That was Mr. Olaf Skog, the permanent representative of Sweden, one of the two drafters. And I think that portion of it we're going to put online because I think it's newsy. Now, we're down to the last strokes here. I mean, it's already online, but I mean, break it out as a separate Twitter video, maybe even YouTube. Now, the funny thing is that before this meeting today, this place was jam-packed with people looking for the slightest wiggle quote about this. And when the drafters actually met with the E10, there was nobody here. And I honestly think, I'm going to, for my own purposes, say that it's because of the disinterested, and racism is a tough word. Whatever. The media, it's not even if it bleeds, it leads. It matters who's bleeding, right? It's not about the quantity of blood. It's about whose blood is being spilled. And the Central African Republic has been a slaughterhouse and a failure for the United Nations for some time now. And France has covered up a colonial history that's shameful. But I guess the media bosses can't make money off that. Yeah, where is CNN? Well, they're hardly the worst. I could name, there are wire services here that not only don't care to be here, but actively have gotten the investigative press evicted. Yes, it's true. You can find it. They wrote secretly to the Media Accreditation Union. Not even secretly. I got leaked a copy. I put it online, and a guy from Reuters complained to Google that his email trying to get me thrown out was copyrighted and should be taken down under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And Google, which loves the UN, took it out of search. It's not real censorship, right? This is the modern censorship. It's just not in search. You can't find it, but it wasn't taken down, so everything is fine. That's Reuters, the same guys who are beating the drum, talking about journalism is not a crime and Myanmar. BS. I mean, I'm sure I feel terrible for the guys in Myanmar. I'm all for them. The guy in the tuxedo, Jonathan Adler, he was informed that his UN office was being used to evict critical investigative media, and he did nothing, absolutely nothing. Same thing with Voice of America. Voice of America, they later had to apologize secretly to people in the Senate, but they used their office to write, they wrote a letter to then head of media accreditation, Stefan Dujarric, saying that the accreditation of inner city press should be reviewed. They later said there was actually no basis. How could a U.S. government-funded pseudo media openly, in writing, try to get another media thrown out of the UN? It's shocking. It's a total abuse of power. And then these guys are going to be giving trainings in the developing world about freedom of the press? BS. Okay, then. We may have missed Kuwait. It could be that the highest Kuwaiti who stayed was the guy that came out after Olaf Skog. Could be, but that's part of journalism. I'm sorry. You know, that's how, honestly, the things that I like to read, I learn almost nothing from the wire service stories. But that's fine. I'm not trying to get them thrown out. Okay, I think it's because, in part, here's what happened. Are you ready? I'm sure there was some things before this, but at a certain point, I was a member of this correspondence group here. I didn't like it very much. It seemed kind of flaccid and pro-UN, but, you know, this is what you do. And then I was covering Sri Lanka, and the government was killing Tamils. And I learned, suddenly, I was on the board of the UN Correspondence Association, and suddenly there was a UN Correspondence Association screening of a government genocide denial film called Lies Agreed To by the Sri Lankan government. And I said, how can you be screening it in the UN in the name of a group I'm on the board of, and I was never told about it? And they said, well, you know. And it turned out that the then president of the UN Correspondence Association, Gianpaolo Pioli, had unilaterally decided for the group to screen genocide denial film on a request by a guy who had paid him money in the past as rent. He was a former tenant of his. He's a very rich guy. His wife is some kind of pasta magnate, and he owns many apartments in Manhattan. I don't think a journalist should rent apartments to diplomats, certainly not ones accused of war crimes. But he did, and then he took their request to screen the film. So I wrote that story. This was the beginning of the end, because other members on the board of UNCA, Reuters, AFP, they all rallied around the flag and said, how dare you attack one of our own? I said, I'm not attacking. I'm just writing journalism like, I thought that's what you do. You write, this decision was made that involves war crimes or spin and propaganda about war crimes, and here's the financial underpinning, and you decide. The guy said, take this article off the internet or I'll get you thrown out of the UN. And that's what happened. And the funny thing is that these other media, for other reasons, they don't like inner city press. They don't like, as you said, gadfly. They don't like alternative coverage. They don't like anyone trying to hold them accountable. And so they saw this opportunity of and the UN is a mafia. Technically, you don't have to be a member of the UN Censorship Correspondence Association. Oh, but they say, I know that they say, new journalists shows up at the UN. They say, join us, pay $100 dues, we're going to get you an office in the UN. They're selling publicly paid for space through themselves. You don't have to be a member. So I've been, ever since then, I've stood up and said, I don't want to be a member. In fact, myself and another correspondent that equally quit them formed something called the Free UN Coalition for Access, FUNCA. Yeah, it's kind of a wordplay, FUNCA. Yeah, it's incredible. It's a total symbiosis of an organization that wants to get away with corruption, child rape, and unaccountability, and a press corps that just wants to go home at 5 or hobnob with the diplomats. And so if you rock that boat, I thought it'd be fine. Just make it unpleasant, give me a certain, dirty looks. No. They threw me out of my office. I tried to then, it turned out that the group itself is deeply corrupt. Beyond the guy, Pioli, I'm not deeply corrupt. It allows for corruption. That the group, I then started covering a UN corruption scandal. A guy called Emmath Singh, a Macau-based businessman, wanted to get UN seeming approval of a casino he was going to build. So he set up something called South-South News, which paid UNCA, the UN Correspondence Association, $50,000, took out a full-page ad in there. I don't know why this group has to have a Cipriani's fundraiser, but they do. $50,000 they took, and they got a photograph, Emmath Singh, the businessman, with the Secretary General at the event. So I wrote about that. Oh, they didn't like that at all. Then I wanted to cover their meeting. They had their annual meeting in the UN press briefing room, right over there. So it's in the press briefing room. I said, I'm going to cover it. If you do it there, I'll cover it. If you do it in your clubhouse upstairs, I won't cover it. I wanted to see whether they would discuss the case against Aung San Suu and whether they were involved, whether they'd been requested for documents. I openly periscoped it, just like I'm doing now. At a certain point, they started screaming at me, so I went into the translation booth, which is glass. They knew I was in there. And then the spokesman came in and said, you got to leave. I said, do you have any paperwork for that? Because my understanding is it's the press briefing room. All journalists can be here. I said, you got to leave. I said, I'm not going to leave on your word, but if a guard asks me to leave, I'll leave because, you know, I respect authority. Guard said, he has no paperwork, but he wants you to leave. Can you leave? I left. 3 weeks later, as I was working right here, covering, a meeting on Syria, guards came down this hall, grabbed my laptop, tore my pass off, and a guy called Captain McNulty, number 2 in Safety and Security Service, said, you're a trespasser, and if you don't leave the UN right now, we're going to turn you over to the police. And leaving my coat still up, it was February, 2 years ago, leaving my coat upstairs in my then office, which I will return to, he marched me with 8 assistants around the traffic circle, pushed me onto First Avenue, and threw my laptop on the ground. And I came back the next Monday, and they said, you're banned from the UN worldwide. Worldwide. Why? For covering a meeting in the UN press briefing room? See, this is how corrupt, total corruption. And there was never a hearing. They never said, why did you want to cover it? Why did you believe you could cover it? Here's nothing. No appeal, nothing. Then I thought there would be, somebody told me, somebody whose name will be published subsequently, that, you know, they're just going to punish you for 4 months. At the end of that, you can go back into your office. All the stuff was still in the office. Then they said, no, we're going to throw all of that out. And they put the boxes on First Avenue, and they assigned the office to an Egyptian state media, Akbar al-Yam, that never comes in. It's a woman that hadn't been seen in the building in 10 years, named Sana Yusuf. She'd retired. She lives in New Jersey. She now she's being used as the pretext to, like, occupy, and we're not going to accept it. I've said, look, I'll put her in the bullpen. I'll be as nice as you want, but I'm not going to accept that Inner City Press's work is hindered for a retiree because you don't like corruption coverage. And the problem is, I don't even care about an office, but if you don't have an office, you're a non-resident correspondent, and you can't, your pass doesn't get you through the turnstile. You can't go down there. Other non-resident correspondents actually do. Nobody cares. For me to cover a meeting down that hall, I have to get a minder who stands next to me and says, who do you want to talk to? This is North, you know, you get the idea. And let's cap it off. Alison Smale, the head of the Department of Public Information, former Germany editor of the New York Times, has been informed about this. Should have just reversed it. I thought an actual journalist would reverse it. No, not just hasn't reversed it, hasn't even explained what the rules are. I said, okay, what's the waiting list to get reinstated? He said, you're not on the list. Wait, you have a category of 1 of journalists in limbo because again, there was nothing hidden about it. I'm covering a corruption scandal. Yeah. It's a total fiasco. And so, you know, that's the thing. When it goes to worse comes to worse. Antonio Guterres, Mr. Conflict Prevention, he's been informed about it. His chief of staff, Ms. Viotti, his deputy. Problem is that power corrupts. Even this seemingly ineffectual guy doesn't like criticism, and if the person criticizing you has already been evicted by somebody else, you can say, hey, I didn't do it. No, it's on him. More than a year. Big Tony and his big golden statue from Paul Biya, it's a joke. It's over. I can also say I think this meeting is over, and I'm sorry for the long tangent, but it was, if you review, I don't know if it'll show up, there was a question of why this happened, and hopefully that answers it. And so, here, from the absolute emptiness of the UN Security Council, from another day of inaction from Central African Republic to attempted work by the E10 on Syria, which we've covered in this periscope. We're going to suspend for now, but we will be back through the tourist entrance, and I will not rest until the things I've described to you are reversed. And that's it. And so that the next, whether it's Sri Lanka, Cameroon, it's not up to these guys to sweep issues under the carpet and take golden statues from dictators and sycophant out with you get the idea. I'll just leave it there. Okay, to be continued. Let's see if it actually, I'd like it to not be what do they call it? A forced forced shutdown, so we'll try to do it this way. That should do it. Nope. Hey, it's the broadcast that doesn't want to end. I'm sorry.